This is Office Talk with Annette Stepanian. Welcome back for another episode of Office Talk. I think you're really going to enjoy today's episode. I'm interviewing Irene Hardy of Magnoliahouse Creative, and we're talking all about websites and brands and how we can better develop these brands to reflect who we are as businesses and business owners. And she's sharing some of her designer secrets and tips with us and easy fixes that we can use to elevate our brands. I'm also putting myself on the line a little bit, and I asked Irene to walk me through my website and do a live website audit. So she's going to be pointing out a few things that I'm doing well, things I can improve on, and I think that part of the conversation is going to be super useful and actionable for you guys. So let's go to the show. Irene, I'm so happy you're here today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I know this is going to be a pretty ridiculous conversation. I have a feeling. We get together and all we can do is laugh and be ridiculous. But hopefully I'm pretty confident we're also going to share some good advice for folks about their websites and technology, because I know all that stuff can be really intimidating for folks. So why don't you bring our listeners up to speed and let them know who you are, what you do, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm Irene Hardy. I'm the owner and creative director of Magnoliahouse Creative. So for the last several years, my team and I have been working with creative entrepreneurs to build brands that are really timeless, beautiful, and just set them up as a platform for everything they want to achieve. We also work with our clients on building really fabulous websites that can really achieve all of their goals and help their business run smoothly. So that's kind of where we've been. And then we're getting ready to launch a new project called the Magnoliahouse Shop. And that's going to be a way for us to work with more entrepreneurs in kind of a faster, more fun, more fresh way than our current kind of lengthy custom design process.
I love it. I love the whole element of branding and doing that. And I think it's one of the fun things about starting a business or having a business, at least for me, because I'm really visual. And I think sometimes I spend way too much on that stuff.
Yeah, totally. Well, it's supposed to be fun. Like a lot of people, you're doing it wrong if it feels hard. If it feels like a struggle, you're not doing it right, because it's definitely supposed to be fun.
So what are some things that people need to be thinking about when they're trying to develop their brand identity? Like what is some questions or things that you walk your clients through if, let's say, they're just starting out and developing a brand, or maybe they're wanting to do a rebrand? What are some things that people need to be thinking about in order to develop that?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that question. So the first thing that I really emphasize to my clients is, your brand is not your logo. So like my team and I, we like to call kind of the work that we do as brand styling. We're giving you, the visuals, the colors, the textures, but that's just layering on top of your core brand. And so it's really important for you to just really know and understand, who your brand is, who you are in business before you start decorating it, which is, that's the fun part, but really starting with the core. So we have our clients do a lot of work. We added a brand strategist to our team. So all of our clients do some pretty intensive brand work before we even, pull together a single mood board. And the things that they work on there, it's things like, what are your core values? What are the things that you're willing to do for your clients? What are you not willing to do? What sacrifices will you make? And what are things like, what are lines that you just won't cross? And so just really understanding, who are you talking to and how do you talk to them? What does your brand sound like, look like, feel like? Because ultimately, how your brand makes people feel, that's what people remember, less than your logo or your colors or your typography.
I love that. It's, how your brand makes them feel. And so a lot of people are the personality behind their brands, I feel like. They're not hiding behind like this name. They're putting their name out there. So how does somebody start to distinguish, or maybe they don't distinguish, who they are kind of in their private lives versus this like brand persona?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I think you can do it really successfully both ways. Whether you and your name is the face of your business or, you've got another business name, maybe you've got a team working with you. I think both ways. So a lot of it is decisions ahead of time, is deciding, what do you share and what don't you share. And so, whether, in either circumstance, you're going to want to let people in, let them feel like they know you as a business owner and a business person, but you also want to have that line and that distance and know the things that you don't share. So either way, you can kind of build around that. One thing too that people forget a lot is, you're not building a business for you, you're building a business for your clients and your customers. So you don't want to do anything that feels inauthentic to you or, isn't true of you or is misleading, but focusing on the parts of your life and your story and your personality that will really resonate with those ideal clients. That can also really help you understand, how do I distinguish between myself and my business?
Yeah, I like to think of it as you are who you are, but there are certain parts of you that you might accentuate or, kind of put an exclamation point on because that's what resonates with the customer or the clientele, or it's just like a fun, maybe, I don't know, maybe your brand isn't fun, but it's like a part of your personality that is, I guess, appealing. So I think of it that way, where it's not like you're being disingenuous. It's just you're kind of punching up the colors in certain aspects of your personality, if your personality is a part of your brand.
Totally.
So let's say it's not a personality brand. It's, something where it has a different name. Does this brand have its own personality? I mean, like, persona then? Because I remember once someone had me develop a brand story and a brand persona for my brand. So how we always do the customer avatar and we give it a name and we do the story, but they made me do it for my brand. So my brand had a name and my brand had a dog and all these little quirky things. And I thought it was so interesting to think of my brand that wasn't me, as a person versus, a thing.
Yeah, I love that. Definitely think of your brand as something separate from yourself, especially if you're not using your own name as the brand name, but either way. So yeah, I think you can definitely do that. I think, what you want to avoid is distance. You don't want to, even if you have a larger brand, if you've got a big team, or you just are a really private, personal person, you don't want to alienate your clients and your customers just because you're not kind of showing yourself. And that's totally fine. A really good way to work with that is to kind of flip it around on your consumers. So instead of talking about yourself all the time, make connections and talk about your consumer. Talk about things that they like and things that get them excited and, create those connection points so that they're able to recognize themselves, not so much recognizing themselves in you, but recognizing themselves in your brand because, you're speaking directly to them and you're talking to them.
And in hearing all of this advice, I feel like it takes time to get there because it's you could have, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like you could start off on day one and you have this vision of what your brand is and who your customer is. But my experience has been so much of that has evolved as I have developed my business. I feel like I have gotten a better sense of who I am and where my customer is because I've talked to them and a better understanding that. So I feel like it's such an evolution. Is that what you experience with your clients?
Yes, 100%. Nobody, the business that you create, the business that you start on day one is not going to look anything like your business looks after 3 years. It's hysterical sometimes, how distant we get from things. And so, a couple things to remember is just, it's not I look back, on some of my original branding and it's just it's hysterically bad. There was watercolor and brush fonts everywhere, which is so not me. But, you just start where you are and you just do the best that you can at that point. And that you're, kind of comfortable evolving. And, you'll notice things that resonate with your tribe and you can really start to kind of emphasize those. Things will start to feel comfortable when you put them on yourself. For that reason, we really don't recommend that businesses really invest in a really expensive brand and website process at the very beginning.
You took the next question, the next thing I was going to ask you. Yeah.
I'm ahead of the game.
Yeah.
So we don't, typically once in a while we'll work with a startup, but it's typically going to be like a more kind of well-funded startup that they've got, a lot kind of behind them. But, for your typical, solopreneur, creative entrepreneur, just work with something simple in the first couple years, something simple, something flexible that lets you evolve. And then when you really start to have a sense of who you are in business, maybe it's year 2, maybe it's year 3, maybe it's year 5. That's the time when you want to kind of take the leap and really invest in professional branding.
I could not agree more. I think there's definitely, you do want to make an effort. You want to look professional from the start, but I see so many folks putting their sometimes limited resources in the shiny, sexy stuff, which oftentimes includes branding and, things of that nature. And it's not to say that it's not important, but you have to realize that it's going to evolve. And so it would be such a shame to have invested so much in the early stages to only scrap it a year or 2 down the road because you realize that brand or what you've developed doesn't really reflect who you are today. So I think that's a really great tip for the folks who are just starting out, is just kind of do enough to kind of make yourself look good without spending all of your resources on that.
Definitely. Yeah. And less is more when it comes to, your kind of intro, your first round of branding. There are a lot of really cheap design tricks that you can use to make things look more professional. Things like spacing out your letters properly and, all of that stuff. As long as you're keeping it really simple, it doesn't have to be anything crazy complex. The more complex you go, the more people will be able to tell that it's a DIY or kind of amateur brand. So just keep it simple, keep it classic, and just let it grow with you for sure.
Do you have some other simple tricks?
Some other cheap design tricks?
Yeah.
Really, especially for those kind of intro brands, your brand is going to be exactly as strong as the typography that you choose. And so, choosing and investing in a really great font can really get you a long way. Google fonts are great because they're free and they're easy to embed on your websites, but they're used like crazy now. And so using something like a Google font is going to, it's just going to look templatey. It's going to look like something that's already out there. So there's some classic font families like Gotham, Proxima Nova, the Brandon families, these just really well-designed, really beautiful fonts. Look at me going on about typography.
I love it. I love it.
So boring.
You're just my type. Ha ha ha. Did you get that? Was that totally ridiculous?
I loved it. Yeah, and so strong typography can make a lot of difference. 50% of logos have, if you look at the major players or, kind of big modern brands, a lot of them are it's just their brand name in all caps with the letters spaced out in a nice font. It's really look at Warby Parker or something like that.
I was just thinking of them too. That's funny. Yeah. And that's why when it comes to trademarking your names and whatnot, you obviously have the option of trademarking a logo and as well as the brand name or slogan. And oftentimes, again, it has to be, case by case basis, but oftentimes the better investment up front is to trademark your name at least, because oftentimes your logo is going to change or it's going to be something like you said, it's just going to be a logo of just your brand name in all fonts. So that's also another thing to think about is your logo is kind of like the dressing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the decoration. It's just part of the experience for your clients. It's not the whole thing.
Awesome. So, okay, well, thank you for sharing your cheap design or quick design tricks. And
yeah. I know. Now all the other designers are going to be mad.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, oh well. Done. Moving on. So what we had talked about that would be kind of fun, I don't know, I'm a little nervous about it, is maybe if you did a brand kind of audit on my website, like a website audit, just to kind of see where are things that I'm not doing right or I can make better, and hopefully people can learn from that. And I know this is going to be a little tricky because obviously we're in an audio format and you don't have the benefit of looking at my website, and probably by the time this airs, I will have redone my website again. But maybe you can walk us through some of the things that you're seeing on my website that could be made better and how people can learn from that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to start, you do have a beautiful website. There's a lot that you're doing right, so you should be really proud of yourself.
Yay, gold star.
Excellent. Good work. But I do see there are, a handful of common mistakes. So we do brand audits we offer that to clients. And, what we do in that is, pull together, usually it's, kind of a 8 to 12 page report, every little thing that needs tweaking or fixing to just really polish it up. So I did a very mini version of that for your site. And I just have, these are a couple of things that I see on a lot of sites when we work through them. So the first thing that we're going to take a look at is the header image on your homepage. So you've got this beautiful photo. Is it from Alicia Johns?
Yeah. I had her do some of my brand photography.
Amazing.
I love her.
So you've got this beautifully branded image, but you may have noticed when you open your website on a new computer, it takes forever to load.
Really? No, I didn't know that.
It does. So looking at that image that you've got up there is huge. The actual file size is really, really big. And that's something that I see a lot of people doing right now is, our new kind of websites are so photo heavy, especially these big full width, full page header images. So I pulled the image from your site and it's about 1,000 kilobytes, which is meaningless to anybody except super nerds. But the standard that we're going to try to hit is going to be closer to 100 kilobytes. So we want to get the file size on your image down a lot.
Okay.
So the one thing that I know you're on Squarespace, so they do a really good job of serving only the image that's the right size. So, pixel dimensions, you're in good shape there. What you want to do, and everybody should be doing this on their website, especially when they've got these large photos, is actually compressing them using online tools you can use to compress things. You can do it through Photoshop. And then if you're on WordPress, you can actually use, an image compressor, an image optimizer plugin. So literally, you won't even be able to tell a difference, but you can get that size down by at least 80%. And that will really, really help your page load times because you have a slow homepage, sister.
Oh, girl. I'm like the turtle, like the tortoise and the hare. My website's like the tortoise. So all I need to do is just upload that image into Photoshop and then go and click the option to compress. I don't have to put any numbers in there. It just compresses it for me. And then I just re-upload that.
Yeah, so what you're going to do is you'll open the image in Photoshop and then you're going to export it. When you export it as a JPEG, you just want to set the quality to something between 60 to 80%. So anything greater than 80% quality for most images is going to be just impossible to see with the naked eye. And between 60 and 80, we still see some really, really good gains on file size, and that's where you can start to just see the very edge. So when you're exporting in Photoshop, you can get a preview of what the image is going to look like. Just drag that quality bar down until you can just barely tell a difference, and that will help you know what file size. But 60 to 70% is usually a good file quality.
I have a feeling that's the case for all of my photos on my website now.
I think it probably is.
Because I'm a high quality girl. I want to deliver quality to the visitors on to my website.
Amen. I totally feel you. So it's really crazy right now. Just with everything that we're doing with, these big photos and these big graphics, it's such a struggle making sure that you've got perfect quality and that you've got the speed that you need. So definitely, adjust it until as long as you can't tell a difference, you're not losing any power in it. And that will just really, really cut your page load times probably in half.
And why is that important, the page load time?
Yeah, that's a great question. So your page load time is critical for new visitors. People have just such a short attention span on the internet, and especially somebody that's never been to your site before. If they have to wait more than about a second or less, half a second, 0.7 seconds, if they have to wait any time at all for your page to load, they're going to be out of there. They don't know what's on there. They don't know you yet. They're not, in it for the long haul with you. And so they're just going to bounce and head on to the next search result on Google. So it can really affect, it affects your SEO rankings are dependent on your website speed, your click-throughs, your bounce rate, all of that is just really, really critical based on speed.
I read a statistic that the average human attention span now is like less than that of a goldfish. Like, I don't even know, first of all, how you measure a goldfish's attention span, but that is so ridiculous. But it's so true. I'm the same. I'm guilty of it too. If I go and it takes too long to load, if I have to wait more than 3 seconds, I'm out of there.
Totally. And then, on mobile, it's that, 10 times more. So definitely watch those image sizes. It's so frustrating because, people can be fickle. You can have the most beautiful website in the world, but if it loads too slowly, nobody's ever going to see it because everyone is just going to get distracted and bounce right off.
Okay, so that was a great tip. So you guys reduce your quality of your images. No, I'm just kidding. Reduce the sizes. The goal is to increase our load times because people are impatient, and it also affects SEO rankings, which is super important. So, okay, what is another thing that I need to improve on? And I'm so scared.
Not at all. The next thing you need to improve on is I open up your website and I do not see your face anywhere, Miss Annette.
Really? Okay. So,
yes.
So why am I? Of course you don't, because I don't have it on there right now. But okay, so
I can imagine your face.
Yeah. So it's so pretty. Okay, I just had this conversation this weekend with somebody about that. So, because that's what I talk about on the weekends is whether or not I should put my face on my homepage. That sounded really stupid, but you know what I mean. So why is that important? Because when the first few versions of my homepage, I did have my face on there. And then I thought, well, this isn't really a website that's about me, right? I want to make it more, consumer client focused. And so I took my face off of it and really tried to make it about like, what does the visitor need? And so tell me why I should or shouldn't have my picture on there.
So you don't necessarily need to have your picture on the homepage. That is totally, totally valid. But what I would like to see on your site is I would like to see your about page be linked in your header. So we want, you don't have to open it up. I am right there with you, girl. I do not want to put my face front and center on the header of my website for sure. But you want you and your picture to be just one click away for your visitors. So I know you've got your about page linked to in your footer. But again, when you have a new visitor come to your site, the first thing they look at for clues about what is this website, where am I, is they look straight to your navigation. That's how they know what to do next. So you want to invite them in your navigation to get to know you. So that's a tip that, I have for everybody is make sure you've got your about page, linked really prominently, and make sure it's really accessible for people to get to so that they can understand the background, the story, who you are. One thing that you are doing really, really, really well on your about page is I love that you've got a photo of yourself looking straight into the camera. So that's another big mistake I see people making is, we all look great when we've got our face to a camera angle, looking down, showing off those eyelashes that your makeup artist applied. But we want to make that eye contact. So while you don't have it linked in your header, and I'd like to see that, once you get to your about page, you make an instant connection with that beautiful photo.
Okay, great. Thank you. So the reason why I took it off of my header, and maybe you'll talk about this, is the navigation. It looked cluttered. And so I was trying to really focus it on, again, the things that I thought they needed to look at or to be aware of. And then also I'm using Squarespace, and the way it's currently set up is if I have an odd number of like navigation headers, it kind of looks off center. Does that make sense? Yeah, because it goes on either side of my logo, so it looks weird. But that was my thinking, but clearly I wasn't thinking right.
No, yeah. I mean, it's a great thought. And I love, what I love hearing you say is that you were thinking about your user. That's the most important thing. And that's something we really see a lot of people fail to think about is you thought, okay, this is my navigation. This is my primary opportunity to direct people and tell them where to go. And so I love that you thought that through and you wanted to send them to kind of the most, best converting spots. We just want to make sure that people know you. People are not going to purchase from you if they can't figure out who is the person behind this website? Who's this Annette Stepanian? So it's there, your consumers may not even ever click on it, but having it there just gives them the confidence that there's a real person behind the brand. They're not, ordering something from some fake company in China. It really helps make that connection.
Interesting. So knowing what I do and where I'm at and all that stuff, do you recommend that I do something like on the homepage with me, with my face, so people see it instantaneously, given that, I am kind of in the line of work that I'm in?
Yeah. No, that's a really good question. I do really love, what you've got at the top. You've got like a really great call to action. You've got that great photo. So I don't think it needs to be your header photo. I think, since you are doing kind of like the long stacked homepage, I think you do have a really good opportunity just to put a small photo of yourself and, in a small bio of just like, hey, I'm Annette. This is what I do, to help make that connection. So I would probably recommend it. It's not a deal breaker, just as long as it's accessible somewhere else.
Okay, cool. Okay, so the next thing that I need to fix.
So this is just a tiny one, and it'll, we can kind of get into a bigger discussion about why this is important. But on your site, you've got your logo is really small.
Yeah.
And it looks really darling, it's a good fit. But one thing that we're running into is when you look at your logo on a non-retina screen, it's hard to read. So this brings up this whole new issue. It's like a whole new bag of worms that we didn't have to deal with, 2 years ago. But we need to make sure that our websites both look good on retina screens and make sure they don't look good on non-retina screens.
How do you do that?
Yeah, good question. So the easiest way to do it is to check, is to look at both a retina and a non-retina screen. Almost everybody is going to have access to a retina screen now with like an iPhone, I think some of the Android phones are retina or HD display. And then, an older computer, a Mac that's not from, the last 2 or 3 years, is going to be non-retina. So I actually do my development on a non-retina screen so that I can make sure everything is still readable, and then check everything on a retina screen to make sure it's, everything is optimized properly. But if you don't have access to, either of those screens, there's a couple of really easy things you can do. So you just want to make sure that things are big enough. You want to avoid, really, really thin lines. We've seen this huge trend, emerge in the industry of using really thin lines, really light fonts. And a lot of that is, people working from retina, people, taking advantage of these really beautiful displays where we can now see, much, much finer lines, and just forgetting about, it's still a majority of the population who don't have a retina screen to access. And so we just want to make sure that we're really accommodating to both. So just avoiding really small text, avoiding really thin lines. And then to make sure things look good for retina, we want to make sure that any graphics wouldn't worry so much about photos, because of the file size and the way they're built, they can kind of scale a little bit better. But, things like your logo, your icons, things like that, making sure that those are uploaded at twice the size they need to be. And that way there's enough pixels for the retina display to push them through.
Okay. And that will be fine with the non-retina as well, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, I'm like literally taking notes. Thanks for all the homework, Irene.
You're welcome.
Or I could just hire you and ask you to do this. So next, do we have more?
Yeah, really not too much more. A couple quick notes. Again, just really paying attention to your user experience. So double checking, when you've got your white font on some of those bright colors, making sure that they're really readable. So the one place we're seeing that is, kind of like the cyan color in your brand, which I'm obsessed with, but it's a little bright. It's a little bit hard to read the white on top of that. So just kind of keeping an eye on that.
Well, that is because I don't know how to change it. Because it's, honestly, I'm just being honest, because it's that Squarespace, it's complicated, but basically, you have one opportunity to pick the color of a header, and so when it's a non-white background, it automatically, I just put it on white, because I figured that would go with most other background colors, versus, I just don't have the option. So how do I do that? Do I need to, code something in?
Yeah, so if you wanted to change the color of the text, you could just use a code block and just use some super, super basic HTML to change the color. You could also change the background color if you want to do that. And, if you're working on these Squarespace templates where they're stacked, it's like the stacked index, you can just upload a little, couple pixels by couple pixels swatch of color as the thumbnail or the background, and that will let you change the color.
Yeah, which is what I've done. That's how I've done that. Sweet. Yeah. So sorry if this is getting too little technical here, you guys, but I'm just Irene just opened up a can of worms. So, okay. So changing it. So it's basically, you want it to be readable, usable. What about my navigation up top right now? What do you think about that other than the about? Is it too confusing?
No, I do really like the way you've organized things. The drop downs are a great tool to get things organized and direct people where to go. I wouldn't hate if you wanted to add maybe a start here button or some kind of just hey, intro. These are the things that I do. Here's my free resources. Here's what you can buy. Here's my trainings. Do you need something more advanced? So I think, some kind of start here button would be great.
Should that be my homepage?
Yeah, you really could be. It would be kind of cool, if you, kind of stacked things and had almost a choose your own adventure, what do you need? What is, where are you in business currently? And just kind of played with the scrolling. I think that would be really fun.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I'm planning to do, but let's see. Yeah. So anyway, okay, sorry. So moving on.
No, love it. Yeah. And then one last thing to keep an eye on is just making sure that you're giving everything a lot of white space or, blank space if you're on a colored background. So, one thing that's really easy for us to forget in this modern web era is, we're used to being space constrained. If you're printing a magazine, it's so much more expensive to print, another page or another 10 pages, that we've really gotten into the habit of really just trying to save space. But the opposite is true on the web. It's all free. You can have as much space as you want on your site. And so on things like your different sections on pages, especially those white sections, just adding in those spacers at the top and at the bottom just lets everything breathe and lets your visitors read it a lot more easily. Yeah. So that would be kind of my last recommendation is just, on a lot of your colored blocks, they look really, really good, but just making sure that on, every section that you're giving it lots of breathing room, lots of white space.
Awesome. Those are pretty simple. That wasn't too bad. I don't feel totally website shame here.
You're not destroyed. Okay. No, there's nothing to be ashamed of on your site. It's a great site. And a lot of these things are just, little technical things. They can make a really big difference for, your conversion rate is, the number one thing is going to be cutting down that page speed time. That's going to skyrocket your conversion rate when it comes to your site.
I'm going to do that right after this call for sure. So thank you for that. That was that was helpful. I loved it. I'm big on improving, and that's just the whole game, right? You do something, you put it out there, and then you make it better, and you make it better, and you make it better. So that's really, I think websites are the same. Is you just got to get it out. Your brand is the same, and then you just, as you evolve, that evolves as well. So thanks for taking the time for doing that. Absolutely. I appreciate that. So Irene, that was super helpful. Was there any kind of last few tips that you wanted to share with our listeners today?
No, I think that covers it. I think we're in good shape.
Awesome. So with that said, the last thing I love to ask all of my guests is to fill in the blank for the following question, which is the one thing I know for sure is, and you go for it.
Well, the one thing I know for the most sure is where to get good burritos in the San Francisco Bay Area, where I haven't even lived for 10 years.
You do, and I can attest to that because we have gone on a Bay Area burrito adventure. Yeah,
I can make you a map if you'd like.
Yes.
We're starting a website.
I should put that as in the show notes, your Bay Area burrito map.
Yes, please.
Okay.
East Bay. That's
East
important.
Bay, yes.
East Bay burrito map. None of you mission people get after me. No, but really, I think the one thing that I know for sure is, this is supposed to be fun. Like, we got into business for ourselves because we didn't want to have a boring office job. And I know I do this myself, and I just see so many women in business just stressing themselves out so much and doing all these things that are just not fun and just being, having really rough day to day. And, this was never supposed to be like that. This was always supposed to be fun. And so just, if there's one thing I know, is just ease up on yourself, make it fun, and figure out what really lights you up and do more of that.
That's so true. And I think it's such a beautiful reminder, because at the beginning of this year, I was like, what do I want to feel in my business? I was like, I want to have more fun. I thought the same thing that you just said. I was like, I don't have as much fun as I thought I would, because it's stressful. It's all on you. Yeah, you might have a team supporting you, but for most of us, it's a lot on our shoulders, and it's like you're never done. I mean, I was last night, it was like 9:30. I was still like in front of the email, watching, TV with my husband. And I'm like, ew, this sucks. So I know you're really good. You just have a fun personality to begin with. How do you invite fun into your day-to-day in terms of your work?
Yeah, that's a good question. How to have more fun.
Tell us how to have more. We should do an episode, how to have more fun.
Oh, follow up. I love that. So yeah, I think, one of the things that's been really big in my business, I really looked around, a year and a half ago and really felt the same way. Like, I'm not having fun. I don't want to keep doing it like this. So, things that have really made all the difference for me is, having a really great community. So, having your business besties, people you can reach out to, have a Slack channel. It's amazing. Full of, people that you can just, connect with on a day-to-day basis. And then just, slow down and enjoy your work. If that means that, you've got to work late and it means, opening a bottle of wine while you finish up your emails, do it. If it means, going to a cool coffee shop to work on a special project, do it. If it means like taking a nap in the middle of the day because you're too tired to keep going, just do it, and cultivating, a really beautiful space to do your work. And just remembering that, we don't live and die by our businesses. It feels like it sometimes, and our businesses totally do depend on us, but it doesn't have to be, your worth in this world is not dependent on your business. And I think when you let go of that, it really opens you up to just, see it for what it is, which is a fun, a really joyful way to, make a living to support, the life that you want to live.
Such a beautiful reminder. Thank you so much, Irene, for being here today. You're like, I had that in me? Who knew?
Yeah. Told you. Smarter than I sound.
Yes, you do sound like a Valley girl. And I say that with as much love. And if I do too, sometimes I listen back to podcast episodes. I'm like, oh my God, I sound like a total Valley girl. But you know what? We're from California. That's what we do.
Yeah. But I like to call it Valley Girl / Southern Drag Queen.
Yeah.
After 10 years living in the South, taking on a whole new, what do you call it?
Accent, I guess.
Accent. What?
Would it be an
I
accent?
Get the word.
Whatever. We've talked enough. Our brains aren't working. But anyway, with that said, thank you so much, Irene, for being here. I truly, truly love talking to you. And I know you've offered some really good nuggets for our listeners here today.
Well, thanks for having me.
And that wraps up another episode of Office Talk. Thank you so much for being here as always. And as always, you can find the show notes over on my website at AnnetteStepani.com/podcast/45. So you can get all the details about Irene and Magnoliahouse Creative and her new shop all in the show notes. And in an effort to always improve my website, I have gone ahead and included a new feature on the podcast page where I've grouped all of the episodes by topic. So there are about 10 topics on there, from conquering contracts to money matters to starting your business to growing your business. Hopefully that'll prove to be a useful resource for you. So you can check that out over on the website and click on the podcast tab over in the navigation up on the top. And so all of that stuff will be sorted by topic for you. So you guys can go back through the 45 episodes of great content. I'll be back next week with another Legal Quickie episode. So same time, same place. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on an episode, or sign up on my mailing list and I'll get the episodes delivered straight to your inbox. With that said, my friend, I hope you have a fantastic day, and I can't wait to talk to you later.